of December 6th, 2021 to order. Roll call vote. Vice Chair Tattelbaum.
Yes.
Frank, Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
and the chair is here. All right, please rise for a salute to the flag and for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing as we pay a moment of silence for our service people, both here and abroad, both past and present, and also for our healthcare workers, and also for Joseph Barbero, former member of DCTV, and other various boards. Okay, please be seated. Okay. Our first item on the agenda, we have an appointment at 6:30, which is the tax classification hearing. I'm going to open the hearing now. It's open. Okay. Board of Assessors or Greg, you're up.
Yep. So we're here to discuss the shift for the tax rate. This, once voted, allows us to move forward in getting the third and fourth quarter tax bills out once some approvals are received by the state. Keep in mind that the board needs to go in and sign off on the rate within the gateway, and in the past you have voted to allow me to do that on your behalf. So I recommend we continue to do that, and I will just make sure whatever is voted tonight is reflected in what we check off in Gateway. So without further ado, the Assistant Assessor, Richard Gonsalves, is here, and he will move forward on the presentation. And I'm going to move the camera here. So.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Good evening. Basically, what I'd like to start off first, and I'll hide it in two sections. We're here tonight to adopt a minimum residential factor. That'll be vote number one. And there'll be a second vote to adopt the small commercial business. And that typically the small commercial business adopted in town is at 10%. So two votes, one for the residential factor, minimum residential factor. And the second one would be a vote to adopt small commercial business exemption at 10%. So a few highlights from FY 2022. This year was a full reevaluation. Every 5 years we have one. We did our full reevaluation. The next one now will be in 2027. And a couple things happened. The residentials went up 7.3%. The commercials went up, and industrials went up 4%. The total new growth that we received this year in town was $739,800. Residential was $303,021 of that. Personal property was $436,279. Commercial was $54,500. Industrials were $11,738. So the next thing on the chart was I had given the Board of Selectmen a range. Last year's minimum residential factor that was adopted was 1.59. It allows us this year to go up to 1.63, and that would be the maximum that we can shift to. Is 89. The minimum residential factor would be 89.3953. That is the maximum we can shift the burden to the commercials. So with that in mind, I did a little comparison. If we went, and I'm not by all means telling the board what to shift and how much to shift, but just some notes. Last year, if we went to the 1.63, that would mean a residential tax bill for a median house in town for $3,585.35. So if we did a comparison, that's the same house, the average house in Seekonk, using the town of Seekonk, is $394,700. Their average tax bill is $52.65, roughly a $1,700 difference higher. Somerset has not set their rate yet, but their average house in Somerset last year was $311 even.
Median.
And no average, it was average. So I would assume that their average is going to be going up like everybody else. Their tax bill last year, average tax bill was $45.65.48. Fairhaven did not set a rate yet. Their average bill last year was $319.580. Average house. The tax bill was $36.08.09. And the city of Fall River just set their rate. Their average house is $286 even. Their average tax bill is $36.09.32. Basically, what I'm saying is if the board chose to go to the maximum, it's at $3,585. It's still, in every case that I've mentioned, cheaper to live in Dartmouth than it is to live in those communities.
The other communities are
All right,
average.
anything from the assessors?
The other ones are all average.
Average and median, Bob, average and median.
Well, we're median, and median doesn't reflect the average, which is usually higher.
The thing is about us, ours is a better, in my opinion, ours is a better reflection of the median because you have, Dartmouth is unique with the waterfront. You have some houses that are in town, you know, the older Dartmouth was probably in the range of 200 to 400,000. And if you go to the water, you're looking at $1 million to anywhere up to 4 million. So when you start using averages, it kind of is a little misleading. And in our case, the median is probably a better reflector of the situation that we have out there.
Okay. All right. Who's the chair of the assessors? Is it Bob?
Bob, you're the chair, right? Are you the chair? Bob, yes.
Bob, you have any comments?
Well, I just like to keep it the way it's been going. You know, the split rate, it's getting pretty expensive for homeowners now. When I built my house, it was $44,000. Now it's assessed at $480,000. I pay $5,400 a year taxes. I'm 85 years old almost. And I'm on Social Security. And fortunately, my wife's got a pension from teaching school, and that keeps us above water. But, you know, when you use median, if you take seven numbers, it's the middle number. And if you've got, you know, numbers going up and down, you can have one number that's way out of whack and median out. If you got 14,000 houses in Dartmouth and you multiply it by the median, you're not going to come up with how much the town is worth. But if you got 14,000 houses and you go by the average and you multiply it through, you'll come up with a realistic total worth of the town. And I always have a problem with median. It's in my own opinion, it doesn't reflect reality.
Well, let me ask this question. I mean, I know you've always had a history of having a problem with the median, but really what the number that's really that most important is the actual tax rate. And then whatever the valuation of the house. So whether or not a median is 350,000 or 400,000, it doesn't make a hill of beans because what we're looking at is the tax rate. And then it's as the tax rate is applied to your assessed value of your home and whatever the tax bill is. So that's really, I guess, the most important thing, you know, which for everybody, you know, we want to know what we're going to end up being paying. So members of the board, any questions?
One thing I like to
All right,
add.
go ahead, Bob.
Is a lot of communities don't have everything enterprise funds. We went to pick up garbage at 160,000, something like that. That's not on your tax bill anymore.
Right.
So when you look at that, the enterprise for water, sewer, and everything like that, those are hidden taxes that you can't even deduct now because they're not on your tax bill. So, you know, when you look at this rate here, you're not seeing everything, unless you could figure in with I'm trying to think of the word again. Enterprise fund.
Right. Well, unfortunately, this board and what we're dealing with is the present is we're dealing with past decisions that were made by basically everybody in town because this was a vote. And the only way that's going to change is if you decide to roll all this stuff, all the enterprise funds back into the tax base. And I understand the enterprise funds is a user-driven fund. Those that use it pay for it. And even if trash, let's just say water and sewer. Even if water and sewer was still in the tax rate, there's still a significant amount of people in town that don't use town water, then don't use the town sewer, so they would still be paying for it. It's the same thing with the schools. We all paid taxes when our kids went to school, and now our kids are out. We're still paying taxes for the schools, but that's how the system has been developed over the years. So I don't, the only way to fix that is if you want to roll everything back in, and then of course then your taxes are going to go up. Overall, everybody's taxes are going to go up instead of using, and as far as the trash system goes, everybody pays the annual fee, and then after that you're in control as to how many bags you use during the course of a week. My family's gone down from 4 bags on the average in the beginning. Now we're down to 2. So, and that's a lot to do with recycling. So, and there's a lot of good in these user fees, and sometimes there's a lot of concern too. So, board members, any questions or any comments, Mr. Herron?
I'd like the rate to stay the same way it is right now, because I like to encourage business to come to Dartmouth, and we have a lot of empty buildings right now in the town of Dartmouth.
So you're looking to, right now we're at the 1.59, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so then according to the chart given to us by Mr. Gonzalez, on the median value of the home would be $378,600. The taxes for that would be $316. I mean $3,615.63, which would be a difference of $219.93 more. So basically $55 a quarter increase versus the 1.63 rate, which would increase the taxes only by $189.65, about a $30 difference. When we're looking at these rates, the difference in moving from the rates from one to another, it's really not a lot. It's about $15. So the commercial, the percentage change, if we stay the same, for the residentials at 6.48, the commercial rate rises 0.29%. Whereas if we go with the recommended or the suggested rate at 1.63, the residential rate goes up 5.58%, and the commercial industrial rate gets up 2.82%. I understand what you're talking about, John. We're trying to attract the business in here. I guess tax rates are something that they look at, but generally it's also whether or not they can get foot traffic into the buildings. We already have one building on Route 6 that's being gutted and renovated to have something come in. We do have we do have a very aggressive mall ownership that really tries to make this Dartmouth Mall work. And to be honest with you, over the years, I've been extremely pleased at how they're doing things. I mean, they brought in Aldi's, they brought in Burlington Coat Factory. You know, there's rumors of another pad operation coming in. Whether or not it's true or not, not sure. But yeah, they did lose Pier 1 Imports, but they're using that facility now for a temporary thing. I'm not sure how to go with this, to be honest with you. Mr. Tattlebaum?
A couple of questions. Nice presentation, gentlemen. Could you comment, it appears that the commercial percentage, the residential percentage is decreasing and commercial is up. Could you comment on that and see what the kind of where the trend is for that particular percentage?
What do you mean, by levy or by value?
No, by a percentage of the total. Commercial versus residential versus the rest.
Well, the reason residentials went up greater than commercial.
No, I'm sorry, Richard. Let me rephrase the question. The percentage of revenue taken in, tax levy taken in for residential versus the rest, residential seems to be dropping as a percentage of the total.
Only if you shift to the max. If you don't go to the max, you notice in every single example we give, there's increases in the residential side. There's decreases in the commercial side. And that's
my
because
question is, excuse me, my question's unclear. I'm sorry. I'm not looking at the tax levy and the percentage of what people are paying. I'm looking at the revenue the town takes in, the percentage of residential versus commercial properties in town overall.
If you put in more buildings.
well, the reason why the residentials have gone up, it's because what's happening is when you shift in every year, when you shift values, at the same time you're shifting values, if residentials are going up greater than commercials, and like Bob just mentioned, if you don't get no influx of large commercial buildings, when I read to you earlier, the growth in commercial was only $54,000, but yet in the residential side, it's 6 times that, 300,000. So that shift that we have in value that's coming in, and the shift that's added in the reevaluation causes a increase on the levy and on the burden of the residential side.
I could be mistaken, but I thought a few years back, 93% of the total was residential. It's now, it shows at 84%. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
No, I don't think so. No, it's never been that high. There was one year we saw, actually 2 years, when the 2 hospitals came on, we saw an influx because those 2 hospitals in a sense, and it was at the same time with the solar farms, you were looking at about a $60 million increase over 2 years. Value.
Yeah, 2 years that disappears.
All right. Mr. Mickelson?
So do we need to close the hearing and then have this discussion?
Well, we're still having the discussion in the hearing.
Okay,
I'm just seeing if anybody has any questions of the assessors on the hearing.
okay. So Mr. Gonzalez, great job as usual. Thank you very much. I'll wait till we close the hearing.
Okay. Mr. Grace, do you have anything with the, for the assessors?
Yeah. I just, as I look at the numbers, I think we should be at 1.63 because everybody's taxes are gonna go up, and that puts the percent change closest to what it is. It actually looks like it should be more than 1.63, but we don't have any option for that. So the 2.82, 5.58 is the closest of the increases.
Okay. Mr. Nunes?
You have to
Unmute,
unmute
Kurt.
yourself.
Unmute yourself, Kurt.
Oh, no.
Okay.
I mean, hear me?
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. Go ahead.
Obviously, I've only been on the board since April, so I have a lot to learn. I've completed my initial one-on-one training. Learned a lot from Richard and the other board members. Enjoying it. So I got in on some unusual circumstances, but I'm taking this very serious. And happy to give some time. Most of my experience in this category is because I own a real estate company and been in real estate for many years, buying and selling houses since 1983. And my opinion on this split tax rate, as a realtor, and what things I see across my desk every day, I can see a lot more discrepancies in values on commercial being valued lower, percentage to what something would sell for, what the assessment is compared to the residential. I think my taxes on Shop Street are around $3,000 for a small ranch with a half an acre lot. Show you a property on the waterfront, mixed use, 11 units. I think they're paying around $11,000. I forget the exact assessment. I don't have it with me, but my opinion falls a little closer to the bottom of the page, like Mr. Gracie talked about. Again, I'm new. I'm learning. Just giving you the benefit of my real estate experience and what I've seen. Donald, if you remember, quite a while ago, we talked about this on Facebook one time. I was on the board and said, the state really has our hands tied sometimes with the values on commercial. But I can't comment on that because, again, I'm still learning.
Yeah.
What I have.
Yep. We're given a playbook from the state and we have to play by that playbook. Okay, there's anybody else, Mr. Barnes, on the,
Yeah, two quick things. One, the maximum shift you can do by law is 1.63. So
Correct.
That's why nothing's been provided beyond that. Secondly, the current residential rate is $9.90 and the current commercial rate is $17.61, to give you some perspective.
it's $9 and what?
90 cents.
90 cents. Okay, and the commercial is 1760?
It's 1761.
61.
Yes.
So, and then at the 1.63, that residential rate would go down to 9.47, and the commercial and industrial rate will go down 17.48. Correct?
Yes, in both cases, it would go down, and that's obviously reflective of the increase in
In
profit.
valuations, right? Okay.
And I should make one final note. Every 5 years, we must do a revalve where the town has to do a full and fair valuation of all its properties, where the state closely looks at all data from the bottom to the top. And we have completed that successfully this year. So the good news is we won't have to do that now for another 5 years, but that was a major task, and we were very fortunate that we had staffing capable of doing that for us while we're in some transition in the assessors department. So I want to commend the assessor's office for that endeavor.
Okay, all right. On the hearing, any more comments for? Any comments against? All right, I'm going to close the hearing. All right. Board members, discussion. Mr. Mickelson.
Yes, thanks, John. Frank, we always seem to be on the same page this time of year. I was looking at the 1.62, the very little difference between the 1.62 and the 1.63, but if you take the taxes, the taxes will be going up because the valuations will be going up. So I think in due respect, I think I wanted looking more closely at 1.62, but I'm looking at the numbers lowering it a little bit. So 1.63 I would vote for.
Members, discussion? Anyone else? Mr. Tattelbaum?
Yeah, I think leaning that way myself. I just want to add about business and commercial. We have the entree coming soon of a master plan. We've charged our director of development to be very aggressive in looking at properties that we have not done a lot with, and we've also been pretty lucky getting other things done. I think we're going to make a major new effort to find new businesses and develop it, and I don't think the rate itself is going to meet any issue because we have so much to offer and it's such a reasonable rate anyway, so I'm not concerned about that. And I think our director of development is going to find a lot of success in trying to help us develop and redevelop some of the properties, so I don't think that's an issue. I'm 1663 sounds fine to me.
All right, it looks like discussion is basically, all right, anybody would like to offer a motion?
I'll make the motion that we adopt the 1.63, and also that we honor that 10% discount.
All
for
right,
small
let's
bus-
make that a second motion.
All right, okay.
Like to
So
always
do
like
that.
to do those to,
yeah,
separately.
I'll make a motion to the 1.63.
I'll second that.
All right, motion to set the rate, what's it called? All right, moving the rate from 1.59 to 1.63, made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Gracie. This in essence will set the residential tax rate at $9.40 per thousand and the commercial industrial rate at $17.48 per thousand. On the motion, any questions?
Yeah, got a
Mr.
question.
Bonds,
Sean, something going on in the assessors.
Mr. Bonds. Mr. Bonds, you muted.
You need
Okay,
to,
Greg.
not the shift number, but the factor number.
Factor
So
number, thank you. Thank you. That's what I need to
Tell 'em the
know,
number.
factor number.
Factor.
Tell them,
Factor.
What was,
All right.
it's this number, 89.
That's the motion.
is it this?
No, it's this one.
It would be 88.
Are we correct on that?
Yeah, excuse me, guys.
88.655550.
No, excuse me.
This is last year's.
The factor, no, you have to vote on the bottom of the page, the minimum residential
Oh,
factor. is
Right, 89.3953.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
That's correct.
Richard, that says last year's minimum residential.
Okay. Now, all right, so wait a minute, hold on.
Yeah, that's it.
What is the MRF that we have to vote on today? Is it the 89.3953 or is it the 88.6550?
I believe it's the 88.6550. This one
Okay.
said first.
So the
That's what I
motion,
said before.
all right, the motion made by Mr. Mickelson would be to set the tax rate at the 1.63 with a minimum residential factor of 88.6550 for fiscal year 22,
That is,
Yeah.
that is.
correct?
Correct.
Correct, yeah, we
Thank
just
you.
double
And
checked.
Mr. Gracie seconding that motion. On the motion, any further questions from the board? Roll call vote. Mr. Tattlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Harron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Okay, thank you, assessors. Mr. Bonds, I believe.
Wait, we have to vote on the 10%, Sean.
Hold on.
We have to
That's
vote on the
next motion.
10%
I
as
just wanted
well.
to thank them, get that out of the way. The next motion we would need is to do the 10% small business reduction. Do I have a motion on that?
Yes, motion to do as every year that we have in the past, small businesses that will get a 10% discount.
Second.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Gracie, who got it under the wire. And on any questions? Roll call vote, Mr. Tattlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Harron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Okay, now, for the Board of Assessors, thank you very much. Mr. Barnes, thank you.
Could you
Appreciate the
vote
work
to
that you guys
allow
are
me
doing and have done.
could you vote to allow me to sign on your behalf on the
So,
recap?
so moved.
Second,
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Gracie to allow Mr. Barnes to sign the select board signatures on the behalf of the town for the
Trust
separate.
signatures.
On the motion, Mr. Tattlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
All right.
Next item, we have 632. We have request for proposals, the approval of the Affordable Housing Assistance Purchase Program. I believe we'll just go right to Cody on this.
So
Haddad.
for this, you will need to open a new meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust. Although it's the select board members, it's technically a separate body. So once you do that, I can discuss what's before you, and then you can close that and go back to your regular select board meeting.
Okay, all right. What we will do is we will reconvene how do you call it? We'll recess the select board meeting of December 6th, and we will open the meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust for December 6th. Roll call vote. Mr. Tattlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Okay, the Affordable Housing Trust is now open. Mr. Haddad.
All right, thank you very much. So in the past, the Affordable Housing Trust has opened the Homebuyer Assistance Program. This has helped two Dartmouth first-time homebuyers with down payment assistance. It's a great program. It's been funded through the Community Preservation Act funding. And so it allows for grants for a first-time homebuyer, income eligible, anywhere from $100,000 to $150,000. That does not have to be repaid. So this would be a request for proposals that we put out. We hire a consultant who is certified through the Department of Housing and Community Development, who walks us through this process. There's a lottery. They prepare the applications and help the home buyer through the process, as well as myself. So I'm just looking for approval of the RFP so we can get that posted. We'd be looking to get that out. We'll have responses due sometime in January. And then we'll go through the process. Once we have a contract, the contract with the consultant will come back before you for approval. And then we'll work through the process and try to find one or two home buyers eligible for the program.
Board members.
Motion to approve the request for proposal.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Herron. On the motion, any questions?
One quick question.
Mr. Tattlebaum.
Cody, did you say the goal was 1 to 2 applicants or successes?
Yeah, we have funding for two. So if we can get the applicants, we'll certainly do two. I think last time they were only able to find one, but I'm hoping to have a more aggressive marketing strategy. So hopefully two.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Roll call vote. Mr. Tattlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and chair votes in favor. Okay. All right, that's it, Cody.
Yes, that's it. So you can
Okay.
adjourn and
I'd like to have a motion to adjourn the Affordable Housing Trust,
So moved.
made by Mr. Gracie, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Herron. On the motion, any questions? Mr. Tattlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Okay, when we're back in regular session of the select board now. All right. Next item under new business, the Lincoln Park Approval Authority. Lincoln Park Plan Approval Authority. Ugh. Okay. All right.
So this is in accordance with Article 12 of Dartmouth zoning bylaws. It's the 40R district, which is Lincoln Park. So 40R calls for a plan approval authority, which is 3 members, 1 member of the select board, 1 member of the planning board, 1 of the zoning board of appeals. In recent discussions, we expect a developer to potentially be submitting an application. And so in researching this, the appointments of the members have expired in 2019. So really looking for the select board to choose their representative. The planning board and zoning board of appeals are also doing the same, so we can get this committee active again.
Okay. All right. Mr. Tattlebaum.
Yes, I believe Mr. Mickelson was on that board back and before it expired in 2019, so I would make a motion to elect him to the position.
All right. Motion made by Mr. Tattlebaum to appoint Mr. Mickelson to the Lincoln Park Planning Authority. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Gracie. On the motion, any questions? Anybody else? Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Tattlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Okay,
Yep, thank you.
congratulations. Good
Very
luck.
good. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item, the ambulance contract. Mr. McGinnis.
Yes, so our current ambulance contract expired October 31st. I was before the board back in September to present options to the board on how to approach the renewal of the contract. The board voted to work with the current vendor, Stat Ambulance, to renegotiate terms of a new 5-year contract. So with that in mind, we put an internal team together of myself, Greg Barnes, Gary Carrero, and Cody Haddad. We reviewed the contract. We reviewed a number of similar contracts from other communities. We then met with a representative from Stat to talk about some of the changes that they desired, some that the town desired. And with that, we came to an agreement on a few terms. Basically, the substance of the contract is the same. We've tweaked some small things. You all in your packet have the updated contract with the revised wording in red. Some highlights from the contract are the revenue the town would receive from the contracts would go from the current annual payment of $95,000 to a 2022 payment of $148,782, and it would increase annually to a 2026 payment of $159,707. Additionally, we made 2 vehicles required as part of the contract. That's a third ambulance and also a vehicle they call Medic 9, which is a paramedic operated Suburban that can provide much of the same services. So they were willing to include that. Also, we've just changed their performance bond from $65,000 to $100,000. And we've changed the average response time to what the real world actual is of 8 minutes and 12 seconds. It was previously at 6 when we reviewed all of the data. The average time was 8 minutes and 12 seconds. When speaking with the fire districts and the police chief, nobody had any issues with the response time. Much of the response time is out of the control of the vendor as it is. They cannot control traffic or weather, but they can control the time it takes them to get the call in out of the station. And so we thought that was a fair assessment, a fair expectation. And other than that, the rest of the contract remains pretty much the same. We've said in the past, they provide us a number of services outside of the contract. They've done that for years. They will continue to do that. They are committed to the community. So we think it's a good relationship. We think the contract is fair for both parties. We're presenting it to the board for approval.
Okay. Board members. Mr. Herron?
I have a question on the Medic 9 vehicle. Will that be designated only for the town of Dartmouth?
Primarily for the town of Dartmouth. We didn't stipulate that it'd be only for, we said primarily for the town. But generally it has been just dedicated to the town.
All right. When are the peak hours for ambulance services?
I don't have that data in front of me. I can certainly get that for you.
All right. On the question of training, it says, they'll offer training free of charge upon request to the town administrator. Could we get more clarification of that right now? For instance, other towns and cities offer like recertification, first aid, CPR, and it's very vague there as to what we can ask for and whether we'll receive it going forward.
Well, I can tell you that they've offered whatever training we've requested in the past. We've mentioned many times that they've gone above and beyond and outside of the contract to help facilitate vaccination clinics and testing. I think in speaking with them, they're very willing to provide whatever training we require that's within reason. And they have provided this training. So, we kept it broad because they've been very accommodating. And we would like to continue to keep it broad.
So if someone was to reach out to you in the future, say, hey, we'd like to have recertification, what does that mean for coming from the town? Is it a yes, or can they say no?
If maybe I'm not following your question. So if we approach STAT and ask for recertification training and they say
Yes.
no,
Can they say no?
No, I don't think so. They can provide the training, but they may, add a cost at their expense. That may be something that they, if there's an equipment cost that goes along with it. We haven't discussed that, but like I said, they've been very accommodating and they've been very generous with the training they have provided. So that's why we kept the contract language the same.
And excuse me, but haven't they brought in equipment on their own and donated certain equipment?
They have, yes.
Yes.
And this training is for town departments, correct?
Correct.
And also,
Yes.
the fire districts.
Yes.
Yes.
I believe, Mr. Gracie, I think you had a hand up too.
I was thinking of it. You're clairvoyant because
That was a
I don't
cigar.
know. I might have saw it go
Too
up.
much-
I don't know, to be
Too much
honest.
smoke.
It's writing down notes and stuff is just.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Tattlebaum, I definitely saw your hand.
Well, yeah, I had made a note agreeing with Mr. Harron regarding the training, because I think one of the discussions we had way back when was because this is not a typical negotiation. If there are any specific things that we think we should have, I think it'd be nice to put a little request together. And I also agree with Sean McGinnis that if they do have some costs, and that's why they say they can't do it, then, for equipment, we could then talk about it. But I think that there's anything at this point in time that our fire people or even police think is important to train, that we should probably ask for it and see where we stand on it and try to make it happen, because they've been they're cooperative, they want to do it, but if we don't ask, they're not going to volunteer it.
Well, they have volunteered to do quite a bit of training, and if we stipulate the specific training, we would like them to provide, instances like COVID could hit again, where that would not have been included in the contract, and they did provide training that was related to COVID. So if we list everything, they may say, well, that's not in the contract. So this way,
I'm not even saying list everything. I'm saying if there's anything that's particularly important that we want to, that's reasonable, or we can negotiate, it'd be a good idea. If the fire and police departments can agree there is something, but maybe there isn't because they didn't list it.
We've spoken to them about that, and they're content with the training that they've received from staff,
Okay.
as well as recreation. They received training as well for the lifeguards. So they're
Great. Good. Thank you. That's all I need to know.
All right, what's the board's pleasure?
Motion to approve the contract. As written.
Mr. Gracie?
I will second that, even though we don't have anything to compare it to.
Okay, well, the only thing we have it compared to is the old contract.
Right. But that doesn't tell us what everybody else would offer.
well, I can tell you, we reviewed, I think you saw my memo, 15 or 20 different communities and their contracts. And the contract that we currently have in Dartmouth is one of the better contracts.
I can live with that. All right, motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Gracie. Any questions on the motion? Roll call vote. Mr. Tattlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Harron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Okay.
Mr. Chair, do you want to vote to have me stamp the contract?
Please, do I have a motion to allow Mr. McGinnis to stamp
So move.
signatures on the contract?
So move.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Mr. Gracie, motion. John, is that a second?
That's a second then.
Thank you. All right, on the motion, any questions? Mr. Tattlebaum,
Yes.
Mr. Harron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
I'll come in tomorrow morning. Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's worth noting, if I may, that this was a rather different kind of, not really a negotiation. I think that, and we asked Sean to go out and do a lot of research and find out where we stand. And I think it came out to be good for the town and good for STAT, and a big improvement on what we had, but keeps us with a company that's been very good to us for a long time, especially when we needed the most during the last 2 years. So I congratulate Sean and his staff.
Oh, we had a great internal team working on it, so that was excellent.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Okay, next item on the agenda is the Four Kings. Four Kings Plaza, I believe it is. It was a parking issue. Let me just, I received several phone calls regarding parking along Potter Street at the end of Russell's Mills Road, and where there are cars parked on both sides of the street, which allows for a bottleneck of vehicles going in and going out of Potter Street. Having also to navigate that for a few weeks, I can see why people were getting concerned for all intents and purposes. So I had suggested for the safety officer to take a look at this, and believe it or not, he had back in 2013, and a letter was sent to this board regarding this. I'll be honest with you, I don't recall seeing this letter back in 2013. I looked through my notes. I don't recall seeing it. I looked at the agendas and the packets. I don't recall seeing it there either. So, but we do have a letter from the Board of Appeals with conditions that once that plaza was given the zoning Board of Appeals, that there were requirements of parking signs to be put up in several areas, and those signs have not been done. So I think it's incumbent upon this board, along with the safety officer, to enforce the zoning Board of Appeals decision, and also the conditions placed upon the zoning Board of Appeals, and to have the owners of the Four Kings LLC King Plaza do what they said that they would do at the zoning Board of Appeals hearing. What say you guys? Mr. Herron?
Mr. Chairman, I stood at the corner of Potter Street for about 30 minutes one day because I've received phone calls, and when a big truck comes up Potter Street and takes a right or a left on Russell's Mills Road, it creates a real havoc. So something needs to be done on one side of Potter Street.
Yep. And sometimes those vehicles come out from that area there. Usually it could be CERTA response vehicles. And I noticed over a period of time that when CERTA response vehicles leave, they use the other street. They don't go Potter Street. They use the other street, then cut over to Potter Street halfway down the middle and then come out that way. So I'm not sure if it's probably easier for them to get where they need to go. But Mr. Gracie, you also had your hand up second, then Mr. Mickelson.
Yeah, I was gonna make a motion that we adopt the requirements that were articulated before.
I think it would be enforce the ZBA conditions.
Correct.
Correct?
That goes back with Jackie Figurito.
Yes.
Sorry.
All right. First of all, all right. So I'm going to accept this motion, then we'll discuss the motion, Mr. Mickelson. Hold on. So the motion from Mr. Gracie is to notify the owners of the King's Plaza that the town wishes to enforce the conditions imposed upon it and the ZBA action back in 2013, and which they agreed to. Correct?
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, Mr. Mickelson, thank you. All right, Mr. Mickelson, on the motion,
In due respect, I'd really like to hear from Joe Vieira what your feedback is on that. I probably might not have voted or seconded it, but you know, it's black and white. It's been it's been in front of us for many years since I was on the planning board with Jackie Figueredo, and I do remember that. So, but what do you say, Officer Vieira? Unmute yourself.
Joe, we're not having a hard time hearing you. You gotta probably move a little closer.
No. Turn the mic up.
About now. Can you hear me now?
Somewhat, yeah.
Yeah. Be move location.
Okay.
Stand by. Got to tour my house.
Gone mobile.
Do you have a license? Do you have a license there for that?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Back in 2000, email from the board looking at that intersection and development.
I can't
Not
understand.
working, Joe.
Joe, sit down a little bit.
Huh?
Get
Joe, sit
closer
down
to
a
the
little bit.
microphone. There you go.
Received a request with that intersection.
Joe, it's not working. Joe, we're having a hard time hearing you.
Give me a second. I'll go on my phone. Give me a minute.
Yeah, sign out and then come back in.
It's unusual to not be able to hear him.
Yeah, I know, huh?
Maybe he should use that equipment more often. That's our boy.
Sounds the same right now.
Can we do something?
All right, while we're waiting for Mr. Sergeant Officer Vieira, is he a sergeant?
Yes.
Sergeant,
All right, while we're waiting for Sergeant Vieira. Okay.
President.
Yeah, yeah, really.
President of the,
Let's take the appointments for the Broadband Advisory Committee. As you know, we wanted to set up this committee for the town to look into a municipally owned broadband service. And we finally have 4 members who are willing to serve. The names of James Mathis. As you know, Mr. Mathis used to be part of the town in some aspect, former junior achievement director. Guy's just he's just he's a good guy. Let's see, the next person would be Kevin Laranja on Hicksville Road. Kevin has got a Bachelor of Science in Electronical Engineering, which would be a really good asset to the committee. The next person would be Aaron Cadu. Mr. Cadu is a former he's a video production, and he's into media communications. And he also has a lot of work experience in the electronical field. And last is Saul Raposo. Saul has done some research into the matter, and he's been piping up over on social media for years regarding the municipal broadband system from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I decided to contact Mr. Raposo and put his money where his mouth is. So we have 4. I think what we have is some quality people for this to take a look at it. This by no means sets the town hard fast on the municipal broadband service, but it gets us going to look into it and see if it's something that there's an appetite for, similar to what is currently happening in Fairhaven. So, gentlemen, do I have a motion to appoint all 4 members to the
Motion to
committee?
appoint the broadband advisory committee, appointments of the 4 gentlemen you just mentioned.
Question,
All right, it's a motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Herron. Mr. Gracie,
yeah, I was just wondering, is that the only 4 people that we had? Because I turned somebody's name in and it's not one of those 4.
There was, we have the broadband advisory committee, but we also have the cable advisory committee, which is looking at the Comcast cable contract. So they may have sent in a letter of interest for that board.
Well,
Or
yeah,
that committee.
I know the difference, and what they told me they were interested in was the broadband committee.
these are the only 4 that
That's what
were
we've
given to
received,
us.
yes.
Because it took so long.
Yeah, it did take a while. All right, I guess Joe's here. Okay, so the motion was made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Herron. On the motion, any questions? Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Tattelbaum?
Yes.
Mr. Herron?
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson?
Yes.
Mr. Gracie?
Yes.
And the chair votes in favor. Okay,
Thank you all.
all right, back to
hear me
the
now,
4
Sean?
Kings. All right,
You hear me now?
Mr. Sergeant Vieira. All right,
Actually, it's patrolman again. That was just a temporary
patrolman,
assignment.
okay, there we go.
Right. All right, you can hear me now. Okay, so.
Yep.
Again, back in July of 12, Board of Appeals started up a hearing for the 4 Kings. They required a zoning change there. We looked at the plans and we came up with something that was reasonable for the neighborhood. We did get a lot of complaints. It started off with the CrossFit down there. We actually had neighbors and participants like swinging shovels at each other, so it's really not a good thing. We came up with a plan that you have that's dated November 10th of 2012 of the parking that's down there. Since then, this plan has gone to the town hall a couple of times. The most recent one was under Mr. Cressman. We sent it to him back in 2016, and I've got an email chain that we spoke to John Hanson. That's how far back this goes. He was the director there. So we've been trying to get it done for whatever reason. It never made it. So we'd like to have the board now actually do something because it is a problem down there with the visibility, Potter Street, Rogers Street, all the way down into the neighborhoods themselves. Some of the area we even had set up, and this is usually the last resort, we've got resident-only parking down on Center Street and Rogers Street down the bottom because of the additional cars that are down there. So page 1 of my report, nothing's really changed since then. If anything, some of the markings need to be repainted, but I'm asking that the board vote favorably so we can try to rectify this and straighten this out for the neighbors down there.
Mr. Mickelson?
Yes, officer, do you have a plan, an actual diagram of where these signs will be?
I have it. It's like Article 1 would be no parking zone, tow zone, erected Rogers Street from Russell Mills Road, west of the driveway of Plat 138, lot 99 on both sides of this roadway. I mean, I didn't get into any type of graphics, but I tried to use what the planning board and Board of Appeals were using back then with their maps. Same thing, like the King property, Russell's Mills Road at Potter Street, closest to building number 2. So that would be coming east on Potter Street. It's going to be that right side from the first driveway all the way, and there's a fire hydrant that's there, and it's limited when people come around the corner. It's kind of tight. The other one will be on Center Street, south side from Russell Mills Road. That also gives people a fighting chance to get down that roadway, especially the larger trucks. Rogers Street on both sides. If you recall, with the old King Lumber, where they used to operate, that whole section was no parking from building 1 to building 2, where they used to store all the wood. Because of the trucks turning, nothing's really changed down there. Belois has his office to the left, where he has equipment
The biggest issue is the people who are using Sale or SMEC. All of their employees, there is a parking lot down the street, but like anything else, people will gravitate to the shortest distance to the front door. If they use the parking lot, that would free up a lot of parking on that street. But there's no way for us to enforce that. I've spoken to the director down there a couple of times, who's spoken to her people. And when we do that, things get a little bit better. But like anything else, the weather's getting cold. People are getting closer to that building.
So will you monitor that installation of those signs?
We would not monitor it. It's written on a thing after they put them in. They would mark them out.
Okay.
Not quite sure. My chief has advised me that we're not construction engineers. We just only make suggestions, put things
Okay.
in place. That would be something that I think when that property was built, and I didn't read deeper into the zoning board, but I think that they actually had an engineer that was doing some of the stuff down there. And let's see if I can find the name of them. I thought that they were going to take care of this.
Well, as with any zoning decision, it's up to the zoning enforcement officer to make sure that they take care of any variances and any kind of conditions made upon them for from the zoning board. So
Yeah.
that
And
would
the
be
issue
up
with
to-
it, and the issue with this here is, I mean, it fell through the cracks. We get it. We just want to get this done and in place. Because it is a lot of headaches. We get a lot of calls, and recently, I agree with Selectman Aaron. It's been rough with the neighbors down there.
Yep. So, Mr. Tattelbaum?
Is there, are these people parking there off of Severa because they just don't want to walk that far? Or is there really going to be enough room in those parking lots where they can get them off the streets?
I'm not sure what they're thinking. I think there's enough parking there. I think that was part of the plan, the Valois building. I think the next spot down, there's a larger parking lot between that and the CrossFit area where it was supposed to be designed for people who worked in that building to go over there. We always knew there would be some spillover onto the town roads. But when these developers say they're going to put the people in the parking lot, we take it at face value. That's what they're going to do.
So it's almost like we're going to establish an employee parking lot section where they have to park and the employee walks farther as opposed to visitors who visit that building.
Yeah, I mean, we could ask that. Again, we've spoken to them. We can't enforce that because it is a public road. The only thing that we can enforce and control is when we put resident parking only. At least that gives our people, our full-time people, a spot to be able to pull in front of their houses. A lot of these houses that are affected down on Roger Street, some do have parking, off-street parking. Others do not. There's a couple of two families that are down there that the space is very limited, so they do rely on the street. And again, I won't say it's an older neighborhood, but there are some elderly folks who were down there, even back then in 2012, that was part of the complaint.
Isn't it up to the landlord to enforce employee parking areas, et cetera, because he's obviously running into trouble? It seems like
they've been good with us. We've called over there and I've spoken to them, like I said, a couple of times when things got really bad, and they got a little bit better. But again, as the weather changes, new employees come back and forth. I'm sure it's not their primary thing. Their primary is to take care of their business and, the clients that they serve. So it's not, I'm sure this doesn't go to the top of the list every single time.
Okay. All right. Any other further questions of Officer Viera? Okay, on the motion, roll call vote, Mr. Tattelbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Okay, we'll have this enforced. All right.
Okay.
Next
Excellent.
item on the agenda, we have, thank you, Officer
Thank you,
Viera,
Joe.
for your time. All right, next item on the agenda, we have the recycling dividends grant notification. Mr. McGinnis.
Yes, Mr. Barber here, our interim DPW director, is here to fill you in on the grant that was awarded to the town. Tammy, you there? There you go.
Yep, I'm here.
Yes, Timmy.
Hi, gentlemen. So we were awarded through the recycling dividends program $27,000 for commitment to reducing solid waste and increasing recycling in the community. And these dividends are given on a points basis based on the amount of programs and options that you do offer, and the amount of points that we've gotten for our pay as you throw program, our transfer station our recycling program. Gave us $27,000 from the state. And those dividends are to be used for similar items and programs. So in the past, we've used a lot of the money for purchasing new recycling carts. We've used them for advertising, marketing, public notice for some of our events that we hold, for hazardous waste days and other programs. And we used some of the money last year for cardboard compactors for a couple of the schools as well. So it's a great program.
Good. Excellent. Congratulations on that. That's for sure. All right. Anybody have anything for Tim on this? Okay. Easy peasy. Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
All right. Next item, we have a resignation from Joe Barbero from the DCTV board. Unfortunately, Mr. Barbero passed away last week. But I've worked with Joe on several things, and Joe was a gentleman's gentleman. It was a class act. I know he'll be missed by his family, that's for sure. But he will also be missed by people who have dealt with town and dealt with boards in the town and mostly dealt with Joe. Of course, those people who played tennis dealt with Joe quarterly, probably got beaten by Joe and his brother on occasion, probably mostly on occasion. We will regretfully accept the resignation, but we understand why. And we will have this posted for a position on the DCTV board. Okay. We also have a resignation from Steve Bliven from the Harbor Management Plan Implementation Committee. We will accept his resignation with regrets. However, I believe the person I believe Brian O'Hare has asked to be appointed to this committee, and I believe we also have a letter from Patty Swerendeck, the chairperson of the committee, saying that the committee voted unanimously to recommend Mr. O'Hare to the committee. So do I have a motion to appoint Mr. O'Hare to the Harbor Management Plan Implementation Committee?
Yeah, motion to appoint Brian O'Hare to the Harbor Management Plan Implementation Committee.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Herron. I saw his mouth move. I didn't hear him, but I saw his mouth move. Under that mustache, I can still see his mouth move.
That's true.
All right, on the motion, any questions? All right, Mr. Tattelbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the board votes in favor. Okay. All right, next item on the agenda, we have the official Planning Director Search Committee, the Select Board Representative. At the last meeting, I appointed Mr. Herron. So we'd like to just make this official. Do I have a motion to appoint Mr. Herron to the committee?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second. Motion made by Mr. Gracie, seconded by Mr. Herron. On the motion, any questions? Okay, Mr. Tattelbaum.
Yep.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Okay, terrific. All right, next item, we have the select board meeting schedule. Meetings dates would be January 10th, January 24th, February 7th, February 28th, March 14th and 28th, April 11th, which would be the reorganization meeting, April 25th, May 9th and 23rd, June 6th and June 20th. Any issues with anybody at this time? Okay, these dates we can mark them. They can be changed as we see fit, or additional meetings as needed could be implemented. All right, motion made by Mr. Mickelson to approve, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Gracie. On the motion, any questions? None. Mr. Tattelbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Okay, license
Fun begins.
renewals. All right, so one good thing to report, all the alcohol licenses are in. We have no stragglers.
Thank God.
And this goes to show that the online system is working and working well. So we have, and I'm going to just say that if I happen to stop, it's because I'm fighting another cold. Restaurant, all alcohol, common vic license, AMC Theaters, Apple New England, Azuma, Asian Bistro, Farm and Coast, Phase 2, Fiesta Mexican Restaurant, From the Soul, Gumbos, 99 Restaurant and Pub, Little Moss, Joe's Original, TGI Fridays, Texas Roadhouse, Olive Garden, and the Ninth Monarch.
Motion to approve. All are subject to police chief, fire chief, and director of inspectional services approval.
Williams.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Herron. On the motion, any questions? Mr. Tattelbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
chair votes in favor. Okay, restaurant, all alcoholic, common vic, entertainment with alcohol, Brazilian Grill, Cask and Pig, Rachel's Lake Cider, the Black Bass Grill, Sail Loft, and the Ying Dynasty.
Motion to approve. All are subject to police chief, fire chief, and director of inspectional services approval.
Okay, there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Gracie. Motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Gracie. On the motion, any questions? Mr. Tattelbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Restaurant, wine and malt beverages, common vic, Ayr Shri, Cape's Quality Seafood, Friendly Pizza, Jimmy's Pizza, Max's, Peking Garden. Motion?
Motion to approve. All are subject to police chief, fire chief, and director of inspectional services approval.
Second?
Second.
Mr. Herron.
Second.
Okay, thank you. On the motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Herron. Any questions? Mr. Tattelbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. All alcoholic restaurant, common vic, amusement devices, jukebox, pool table, entertainment with alcohol, Buffalo Wild Wings, Thirsty Whale, and the King's Inn.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We are all are subject to police chief, fire chief, and directional inspection services approval.
Motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Herron. On the motion, any questions? Mr. Tattelbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
and Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. All right, we're gonna lump these together, guys, because it's just restaurant, wine and malt beverages, amusement devices, arcade, Chuck E. Cheese, club, all alcoholic common vic, Stackhouse Fairgrounds, club, all alcoholic common vic, entertainment with alcohol, Allendale Country Club in New Bedford Yacht Club, club, all alcoholic amusement devices, pool table, jukebox, entertainment with alcohol, the Portuguese American Social Club, UMass Dartmouth, otherwise known as SMU Serve Inc., and the VFW Memorial Post. Motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All are subject to police chief, fire chief, and director of inspectional services approval.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Herron. On the motion, any questions? Mr. Tattelbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Okay, packaged goods, all store, all alcohol, Acme Liquors, Cardoza's Wine and Spirits, CV Variety, Dartmouth Market, Dartmouth Wine and Spirits, Lizzie's Liquors, Town Liquors. Motion.
Motion to approve. All
Second.
subject to police chief, fire chief, director of inspectional services approval.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Herron. On the motion, any questions? Mr. Talbot,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Packaged goods store, wine and malt beverages, Bliss Express, BJ's, C&S Variety, Farm and Coast Market, Route 6 Beer and Wine, Shaw's, and Smith Mills Mobile.
Motion to approve, all subject to police chief, fire chief, and director of inspectional services approval.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Herron, okay. Motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Herron. On the motion, any questions? Mr. Tattelbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. All right, last is the porn license, Running Brook. There's 2 licenses, right? Is that what that 2 is? All right,
Correct.
there's 2 licenses there. All right, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve, all subject to police chief, fire chief, director of inspectional services approval.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Herron. On the motion, any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I didn't hear the restaurant Civilized. Should we check into whether they've gone through the paperwork?
Yeah, they're not here.
They aren't on there. I can look into why they're not on there. I'll look into that.
Okay.
We could double check on that, but on the porn license. All right, I'm on the motion, Mr. Tattelbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. All right, while Mr. McGinnis is looking that up. Go on to old business.
I don't know
go
if you want to vote to sign the warrant. I think we skipped over that earlier.
Okay, yeah, that would be a good time to do this. I need a motion to have Mr. McGinnis stamp the warrant on our behalf.
So moved.
Is there a second?
So moved. Oh, sorry.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Herron. On the motion, any questions? All right, Mr. Tattelbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
and Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. Okay, did you find out anything about,
I'm logging in now. It's gonna take a few minutes,
Okay.
so I can find out and get back to the board.
all right. Yeah, just shoot us an email, and then if they've got something, we could
What
always,
was the question? What was the matter?
it was the Thai restaurant up on Route 6, Civilized.
Yeah, Civilized Restaurant, Route 6.
Okay.
Yeah, they are there. All right. Under old business, any updates on COVID?
No new updates. We continue to monitor the Omicron variant. I think you can see in the media that cases are on the uptick. It's really related to the holiday, people gathering for Thanksgiving. But we continue to monitor that both in town and in the schools. Other than that, no new updates. Bliss Corner. Oh, I'm sorry.
Question? Excuse me. Mr. Chair, one question.
Mr. Tattelbaum?
I don't know, this is a personal view, but it's becoming more and more apparent that vaccinations and booster vaccinations are becoming even more and more important. Is there anything that we can do in some form to promote the use? Our percentage in town is surprisingly low of fully vaccinated individuals. Now, this is an opportunity where it seems, based on the news day to day, that a booster, vaccination and booster is a better deterrent than ever, especially with the new variations. What can we do in any form that could possibly promote more vaccinations?
Well, I know we have a clinic coming up that we will announce at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
And I do know that there are walk-in availables at CVS. I got mine last week at
They're all over.
CVS in Westport. I think at this point in time, people have got kind of COVID lag. But he's tired of it, which I don't blame him. Those that will get the vaccine will get the vaccine, will get the booster. Those that don't, they won't. And that's something that, you really can't, you can offer it. We're having a clinic, which I might as well announce. We have a clinic for the Pfizer booster next Monday between the hours of 9 and 12. The Moderna booster will be held Wednesday, December 15th. It'll be at the Bullard Wellness Center. So wear short sleeve, it would help. Face covering is required, as are the insurance card, and make sure you bring your vaccination card with you so that it can be registered, taken care of, and entered. This announcement will also be on the website and also in the Engage Dartmouth portal. So we'll have that.
Is there anything more we could do in the Engage portal, Sean? It would
The only
be
thing
some
we can
form of-
possibly do is we just keep announcing it, keep,
Right.
just keep
CCTV
posting
also.
it, saying DCTV, and, I mean, there's only so much you can do. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
I realize that, but if one person gets it done, I think it's worth repeated announcements. DCTV on the screen.
Yep.
Can we coordinate that in some form, Sean?
Yes, I mean,
Favor?
the good part about the engagement portal is people can log in and they can provide feedback. So if
Yep.
they can ask questions, and we monitor that daily. So if they're asking, well, when is the next update, or if they're looking for particular information, if we realize enough people are looking for the same information, we certainly make more of an effort to promote it. But as it is, it's an opportunity for people in town to really ask for information that we can provide an accurate and quick response. So until it's up to the public to kind of seek it out just as well as we try to get the information out, but it's more helpful if they can log in and ask specifically what they're looking for, and we try to provide it.
Okay. All right.
And Silverlie they just didn't make the list, so they have completed their application process, so the board should vote.
Okay. Well, since it wasn't on the agenda, we'll take it up the next agenda and they'll be fine for the year.
Okay.
So they'll be good. So everybody's good to go. I like that. All right. Next item is the Bliss Corner. We do have, I guess, some news on that. The EPA had their meeting. Yeah.
So the EPA had a webinar last week where they talked about what their plan was. They've identified 5 properties in the Bliss Corner area that they would like to start cleaning up. They originally had anticipated they may be able to start late fall, early winter, but the way things are going, they're being more realistic in their approach and planning on spring to start cleanup on the properties. They'll be in touch with the owners. They've already been in touch with the owners, and they'll continue to be in touch. We're working out an agreement between the town and the EPA to provide them support in the form of a staging area. So we're working on that support agreement right now, and we hope to have that before the board within the next few meetings to give their approval. And we continue to work closely with the EPA and DEP.
Perfect.
Lake Nokichoke, there's no new updates.
Is it safe to say that the EPA and the DEP are asking people, and I think Chris Markey said it as well, that the more people can volunteer to have their properties tested would be a benefit to everybody in the neighborhood as well as themselves?
Correct.
Encourage that. We certainly encourage that.
That was the general gist I got out of that webinar.
Right.
Okay.
It's something this board is in favor of, obviously.
Yes. Very much so. All right. Anybody have anything else come before the board? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
I'm sorry, before you do that, did you vote to sign the warrant? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, I was looking up the Silverlie, so sorry about that.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
That's
I'll be
okay.
in
No problem.
tomorrow.
Okay.
Motion to, like, yeah, I already did it.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Is there a
Second.
second? All right.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Mickelson, seconded by Mr. Herron. On the motion, Mr. Tattelbaum,
Yes.
Mr. Herron,
Yes.
Mr. Mickelson,
Yes.
Mr. Gracie,
Yes.
and the chair votes in favor. All right, gentlemen, thank you for another good meeting.
Nice job, Sean.
we'll see you in 2 weeks. And
That'll be our last
Right.
meeting for the year of 2021.
go Pats. I know what I'll be doing in a half hour.
Yeah, but
What
All
are you
right,
gonna
guys, thank you. I'll close the meeting. Adjourned.